Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're going deep on something a lot of you have been asking about, Microsoft Azure.
Ah, yes, the big blue cloud.
Exactly. We got a ton of listener questions about what makes Azure such a powerhouse, how it stacks up against the competition.
Right, right. It's a beast of a platform.
It is. So you sent in a bunch of articles, and to be honest, some of them were a little dense.
Yeah, I can see how those could be tough to get through. Lots of jargon.
Exactly. So we're going to break it all down, make sense of the tech speak, and give you the cheat sheet on Azure's competitive advantage.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so first things first. What exactly is Azure? Like if you had to explain it to, say, your grandma who's just starting to use email.
Okay, good question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine Azure as this giant digital toolbox.
Oh,
Right?
okay, I can picture that.
Yeah, and it's got everything a business could need, from basic storage, like an online filing cabinet,
Right.
to
Right.
like seriously heavy-duty stuff, like building complex apps, even running supercomputers, all in the cloud.
Wow, okay, so it's not just about storing your photos and documents online.
Oh, no, not at all. It's way more dynamic. You can scale things up or down instantly, like adjusting the brightness on your phone screen.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
And you only pay for what you actually use, so, like, super cost efficient.
Makes sense. Now, one thing that really stood out in the articles was Azure's global reach. They're talking about over 60 regions worldwide.
It's massive.
Is it tough to manage a network that big?
It's mind-bogglingly complex, but Microsoft seems to have it figured out.
So no matter where companies' customers are, their data is close by.
Exactly. Low latency, high performance, all over the globe.
So even if I'm, say, on a research ship in the Arctic, my data's not going to lag.
Ideally not. It's like having a network of servers always nearby, ready to go.
Got it. Now, here's a question a lot of businesses might have. What about hybrid cloud solutions?
Ah, yes, that's where things get interesting. So you've got companies that have been running their own servers forever.
Right, they're comfortable with what they know.
Exactly. They might not want to abandon everything and just dive headfirst into the cloud.
Yeah, it'd be like tossing out all your old photo albums for like a digital frame.
Right. So Azure lets them kind of ease into it, keep some things on premises, move other things to the cloud.
A bit of both worlds.
Exactly. They have the control to choose what works best for them.
Okay, so it's not an all or nothing kind of deal. Now, the big one, security. Data breaches are a huge concern these days.
Oh, absolutely. It's a top priority for everyone.
So how does Azure handle that?
They've got like this multi-layered approach. Think of it like Fort Knox for your data.
Okay, so not just a simple password lock.
No way. They've got encryption, threat detection, identity management, the whole 9 yards.
So it's designed to meet those strict regulations that certain industries have.
You bet. Healthcare, finance, government, they all have those really tight rules about data security. Azure's built for that.
That's reassuring to hear. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, cost. Cloud services can get pricey, right?
They can, but Azure is actually designed to be very cost-effective. Remember that pay-as-you-go thing we talked about?
Yeah, you only pay for what you use.
Right. Plus, they've got tools that help you track your spending, optimize your resources, so you don't get any bill shock.
Okay, so it's like a budget tracker for the cloud. That's pretty smart. Now, one thing I found interesting was the emphasis on integration with other Microsoft products.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. So if you're already using Office 365, Windows Server, that kind of thing.
Right? A lot of businesses are.
Yeah, Azure just slots right in. It's like they were made to work together.
Streamlines things, I imagine.
Absolutely. Unified experience, simpler IT management, boost in productivity, the whole package.
Okay, so it's kind of like a one-stop shop for all things Microsoft. But wouldn't that mean that Azure might not be the best fit for businesses that aren't already using Microsoft products?
You'd think so, right? But actually, they've made a big push to be more inclusive. Yeah, under Satya Nadella, Microsoft's been embracing open source technology. They want Azure to be the platform for everyone, not just Microsoft users.
That's a pretty big shift considering their history.
It is. And it's attracting a lot more developers. You can run Linux alongside Windows. You got deep integration with GitHub. It's a different ballgame now.
So even though Azure started as the Microsoft Cloud, they're trying to broaden their appeal.
Exactly. They've realized that to stay competitive, you got to be open and work with everyone.
Okay, so we've got the basics, global reach, hybrid solutions, security, cost effectiveness, and this new open approach. But what about the really cutting edge stuff? The articles mentioned AI as a big focus for Azure.
Ah, yes, AI. This is where things get really futuristic. Imagine having access to some of the most powerful AI tools available.
Like what kind of tools?
Things like Azure Cognitive Services, Azure Machine Learning. You can build apps that can understand images, speech, even predict the future, kind of.
That's some next level stuff. But is this AI stuff only for like big tech companies with tons of resources?
That's the cool part. They're making these AI tools user-friendly, even for people who aren't, like coding geniuses.
So it's not just for the elite few.
Nope, it's about democratizing AI, making it accessible to everyone.
Interesting. But haven't they also made some controversial moves in this space, like partnering with OpenAI and integrating GPT-4?
Yeah, that's definitely stirred up some debate.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it gives Azure users access to incredibly powerful AI models.
Right, like the stuff of science fiction.
Exactly. But it also raises those big questions about data privacy, control, potential biases in the AI.
So it's not just about the cool factor, it's about the ethical implications too.
Absolutely. We got to think about the bigger picture.
Well, this is a lot to digest,
Right.
and we've only just scratched the surface of what Azure can do. Where do we even go from here?
Well, next, I think we should dive into some of the specific features and use cases that make Azure so powerful.
Sounds good to me. Let's keep exploring.
Okay, so let's zoom in a bit. One thing that Azure really prides itself on is reliability. Like enterprise-grade can't afford any downtime reliability.
Right, like those mission-critical systems where even a tiny glitch could be disastrous.
Exactly. Think air traffic control, hospitals, financial institutions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, those can't afford to have the system crash.
Nope. So Azure has these things called service level agreements, SLAs for short.
I've heard of those. They're basically a guarantee, right?
Right, like a super strong promise that their services will be up and running almost all the time.
No, we'll try our best kind of thing.
No, it's a contractual obligation.
Yeah.
They have to meet certain performance standards or there are consequences.
Wow. Okay, that's serious.
And they've got all these features built in for disaster recovery, like just in case something does happen. Azure Site Recovery, for example.
So even if, like, a hurricane hit a data center.
Yeah, Azure can automatically switch over to a different location, keep everything running smoothly.
That's wild. Okay, so reliability's covered. Now, who's actually using Azure? Is it just for those huge corporations?
You might be surprised. It's really for everyone, from those Fortune 500 companies all the way down to, like, small businesses, startups.
Really? I kind of assumed it was mostly for the big players.
It used to be, but they've really made it accessible to everyone.
Interesting. So what kind of businesses are using it? Give me some examples.
Oh, all sorts, like global retailers managing these massive online stores, or healthcare providers using it to analyze patient data.
Oh, right. For things like personalized treatments, I bet.
Exactly. Even governments are using it to, like, streamline public services.
Wow. Okay, so it's a pretty wide range.
It really is. It's kind of like this
Yeah.
great equalizer, gives everyone access to the same powerful tools, regardless of their size.
I like that. Now let's talk innovation. Azure's doing some cool stuff in areas like AI and even quantum computing.
Oh yeah, they're definitely pushing the boundaries there.
That stuff still feels a bit sci-fi to me. Is it actually being used by businesses yet?
Oh yeah, definitely. With AI, they've got Azure Cognitive Services. Those
Yeah.
are like pre-built modules you can use for things like image recognition, natural language processing.
So even if you're not a coding expert,
Exactly. You can still build apps that have like AI superpowers.
it's pretty cool. And what about quantum computing? That's still mind-boggling to me.
It is. But it has this incredible potential to solve these super complex problems, like way beyond what even the fastest computers can handle today.
So like what kind of problems?
Things like developing new materials, breaking encryption codes, simulating complex systems.
Right, that stuff I can barely wrap my head around.
Same here. But Azure's getting in early with Azure Quantum, their platform for quantum computing.
So it's still experimental, but they're giving people a way to start exploring it.
Exactly. They're betting big on quantum being the next big revolution in computing.
I can see why. Okay, so Azure's not afraid to take risks and invest in the future.
Not at all. And this kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier, Satya Nadella's leadership.
Right, how he's really shaped Azure's direction.
He's completely changed the game for Microsoft. He's got this real focus on innovation, being agile, customer-centric.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the culture, the vision behind it.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things he did was embracing open source.
Which is kind of ironic given Microsoft's history.
Yeah, right. They used to be all about proprietary software, but now they're actively contributing to open source projects, working with companies they used to compete with.
So it's a much more collaborative approach.
Absolutely.
Right.
They recognize that the best ideas can come from anywhere.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered a lot of the positive stuff about Azure. But let's be real. Are there any potential downsides, challenges that businesses should be aware of?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No technology is perfect, right?
Okay.
And cloud computing comes with its own set of considerations.
Like what?
Well, security is always a big one.
Even with all those layers of protection Azure has.
Yeah, even then. Because when you put your data in the cloud, you're essentially trusting a third party with it.
Right, you're handing over the keys, so to speak.
Exactly. And there's always the risk of human error, things getting misconfigured, or even malicious insiders.
So it's not just about trusting Microsoft to keep things safe, it's also about taking responsibility for your own data security.
Exactly. It's a shared responsibility.
Okay, that makes sense. What other challenges are there?
Another big one is vendor lock-in. Once you build your whole system on Azure, it can be tough to switch to a different provider.
Right, it's like getting really comfortable with a certain type of phone and then realizing all your apps and data are tied to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And while Azure does offer tools for migrating data, it's not always a smooth process.
So businesses need to think long-term and be aware of that potential lock-in.
Definitely. It's also important to consider the cost implications.
Yeah, we talked about the pay-as-you-go model, but it seems like it could be hard to predict how much you'll actually end up spending.
It can be,
Yep.
especially for businesses with workloads that go up and down a lot.
So careful budgeting is key.
Absolutely. And then there's the challenge of finding the right people to manage your cloud infrastructure.
Oh, right, you need people with the right skills.
Exactly. Cloud computing is a specialized field, and there's a lot of demand for Azure experts right now.
So it's not just about moving your existing IT team over. You might need to hire new people, train them up.
Exactly. And that can be a big hurdle for some businesses, especially smaller ones.
Okay, so those are some of the challenges, but let's end on a positive note. What are some of the biggest benefits businesses can get from using Azure?
There are a lot, actually. And they can really vary depending on the business. But some of the most common ones are like increased agility, scalability, and cost efficiency.
We hear those buzzwords all the time. Can you break them down for us normal folks?
Sure. So think of agility as being able to move quickly and adapt to change.
Okay. I can see how that's important in today's world.
Right. With Azure, you can spin up new servers, deploy apps, scale your resources up or down really fast. It's like having this super flexible IT setup that can change with your needs.
So even a big company can be nimble like a startup.
Exactly. And then scalability is about handling growth.
Mm-hmm.
As your business gets bigger, you need an IT system that can keep up, right?
Makes sense. You don't want to outgrow your technology.
Right. Azure lets you add more resources really easily as you need them. No need to buy a bunch of new hardware.
So it's kind of like future-proofing your IT infrastructure.
Yep, exactly. Now, cost efficiency is a bit more complicated, depends on how you use it. But one of the big advantages is that you don't have to make those big upfront investments in hardware.
So it's more like renting than buying.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so those are the big three. Agility, scalability, cost efficiency. But what about the less tangible benefits? Like, how does Azure contribute to innovation?
That's a great point. It's not just about the basic cloud services. It's about giving businesses the tools to create new things, do things differently.
Right, like using AI to solve problems we couldn't solve before.
Exactly. Azure's all about pushing those boundaries, not just about keeping the lights on. It's about building the future.
I like that. Now, one last question. We've talked a lot about the tech side, but what about support? Does Microsoft actually help businesses figure out how to use Azure?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They know that moving to the cloud can be daunting.
It sounds like it.
So they offer tons of support and resources, documentation, training, consulting services, a big network of partners. They're invested in their customer success.
Okay, so they don't just leave you to figure it out on your own.
Definitely not. They want to make sure you have the tools and the guidance you need to make the most of Azure.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've learned so much about Azure. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Let's shift gears a bit and look at some specific examples of how Azure is being used in different industries. I think you'll find it really fascinating to see how this technology is making a difference in the real world.
That sounds great. Let's do it. Okay, so we've established that Azure is this super versatile platform. But how's it actually being used out there? Like in the real world?
Let's start with healthcare. It's a field where Azure is making a big impact. Imagine hospitals using AI to predict patient surges, like before they even happen.
So they can be prepared, have enough staff, resources, all that.
Exactly. And think about using AI to help doctors diagnose diseases earlier, like catching things that might be missed otherwise.
That's amazing. So it's not about replacing doctors, but giving them an extra set of eyes, powered by AI.
Exactly. Azure's machine learning can analyze medical images, patient records, even genetic data to help doctors make better decisions.
It's like having a medical detective sifting through all that data, finding clues.
It is, and it can even help personalize treatments, tailoring them to each patient's specific needs.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so healthcare is one area where Azure's shining. What other industries are being transformed by this technology?
Manufacturing's another big one. Think smart factories, where machines are talking to each other, optimizing production in real time.
So no more downtime, everything running smoothly.
Yeah, and predicting maintenance needs before anything breaks down. Azure's IoT capabilities are key here.
Right, connecting all those sensors and machines on the factory floor.
Exactly. It makes the whole process more efficient, less wasteful.
And probably saves a ton of money in the long run.
Absolutely. And then there's retail. Azure's helping businesses create those personalized shopping experiences we all love.
Yeah, like those recommendations you get that are actually spot on.
Exactly. Azure can analyze customer data to predict buying patterns, suggest products, even personalize pricing.
So it's like having a personal shopping assistant, but powered by AI.
That's a great way to put it. It's taking online shopping to a whole new level.
Okay, so it's clear that Azure's not just this tech platform. It's a tool that can be used to solve problems, create new opportunities across pretty much every industry.
It is. And the thing is, Microsoft's not standing still. They're constantly evolving Azure, adding new features, making it even more powerful.
So even though we've covered a lot in this deep dive, it's just a glimpse of what Azure can do, right? Like, who knows what they'll come up with next.
Exactly. That's what makes it so exciting. Azure's not just about solving today's problems, it's about building the future.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much. We started with, what even IS Azure, and now I'm seeing all these possibilities.
I'm glad to hear that. It's been great exploring this with you.
Yeah, thanks for being such a fantastic guide. I know our listeners are going to get a ton out of this.
It was my pleasure.
Well, that wraps up another deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next one.